Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the Be'in podcast. Today's guest is none other than Rav Milston from Midreshet HaRova. Rav Milston has actually been someone that I've been trying to get on this podcast for quite some time. He's a very busy person, obviously being the head of Midreshet HaRova and doing so many other things, as you're going to hear in this week's podcast. But honestly, just who he is as a person is why I want to have him on this podcast, to just allow you guys to get a little bit of a glimpse into who he is as a person. And honestly, after just filming this episode, because I always film the intro after the episode is finished, you definitely want to listen to what we talked about today. Just to give you a little bit of a glimpse, we talked about his time in Midreshet HaRova, how he got there, his time in Israel, the things that are going on in Israel right now, his trips that he takes to Poland to bring groups there, and the amount of inspiration that you will hopefully get for things like Am Yisrael, feeling part of Am Yisrael, and just connecting to the Jewish people in a very honest and genuine way. Like, that's what I take from this episode with Rav Milston. So hopefully you guys sit tight for the next 55 minutes, give or take. Enjoy this week's episode with myself and Rav Milston. Welcome to the Israel Gap Year Be'in podcast. I'm your host, Avi Proctor, and in each episode we get Be'in in depth into the remarkable lives of individuals in Israel who dedicate themselves to inspiring the next generation of Klal Yisrael. Rav Milston, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the virtual Israel Gap Year podcast studio right now. I'm going to start off just with Hakar Satov. Obviously, point being that you are a very busy person running a seminary and doing so many things, obviously outside of Midreshet HaRova, and to take the time to sit and talk and have a conversation for a lengthy period of time is something that I'm very, very appreciative for. So just thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
And also, I have to add to my thank yous, Hakar Satov was always, important. And right before we got on this podcast, you got to say hi to my amazing wife, Yali, who is a Talmidah of yours and Midreshet HaRova. She went for 2 years, and I'm very grateful for yourself and all that Midreshet HaRova has done to help her become who she is. So another thank you. Okay, so today, obviously, we have so much that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about your personal story. We're going to talk about Midreshet HaRova, living in Israel, the times that we're in, and there's just so much that we're going to cover, and I'm beyond excited. But for the people that might be listening to this podcast that don't necessarily know who you are, give them and myself a little bit of a background. Who is Rav Milston, and how did we get here today?
I wish I knew who he was, but I'll tell you a bit of background. Not very interesting, not very famous. I was born and bred in England in a place called Edgware, which is just outside London, but counted as London. I lived in England for the first 17 years before I came to the Gush for a year. I went back to England for a little while, then I came back to the Gush, and then I was in England for about 4 years. I did 3 years in Jews College, did a degree in Jewish studies there, and then I worked for Bnei Akiva of the UK and Ireland, and then I came on Aliyah. I came on Aliyah with a Garin Bnei Akiva, which was a Garin Ozram, to Male Gilboa, Kibbutz Male Gilboa, and I had an agreement with Male Gilboa that I would go and learn Smicha. I started Yeshivat Kibbutz Sadati. The plan was to come back to the kibbutz as Rav Kibbutz, but I met my wife Adina during that period, and she didn't really want to live on kibbutz. So we joined the Kollel in the Gush, and I did another 4 or 5 years in the Gush in Kollel, finished my Smicha there, and pretty short actually. Since then I've been in Midreshet HaRova at 31 years. So, yeah.
Wow. Why? What was that?
I live in Alon Shvut, in Gush Etzion. I've lived there also almost. I don't move around a lot. I'm pretty stable. Yeah.
And it's a very special place, and I had the pleasure of spending Shabbos there a few years ago, and obviously we ran into each other there, and it's a very beautiful community, and I can't help but think, when you tell me your story a little bit, if you went back 35 years or so before all this transpired in your life, and I would have told you and showed you what you would be doing today, what would you have told me back then?
Well, there is a song called Shomer HaChomot, and the words of the song is a song sung by the army choir quite often. It's written after the 6-Day War, and the verses say, Mi chalam az bakita, who dreamt when we were in the classroom, shelamadnu ledaklem al chomotaich, when we learned to dream about your walls, Yerushalayim. It's an absolute dream. It's a dream to your place of work, a small kid coming from London, place of work for 33 years. Even when I was in college, I was teaching here every day of my life. except for Shabbatot. I'm in the old city. It's a dream, really a dream that is never not appreciated every day. That this is the place of my work, and it's wonderful. It is wonderful.
That's so special, and obviously there's very few Jews in the world, let alone that they could say that they commute into the old city every single day. People oftentimes it's I commute to the city. I go to New York City to do my work, and you get to head into Yerushalayim, and God willing, one day that commute is going to turn to Mashiach. B'ezrat Hashem, it's going to be very, very special. My other thought that I'm super curious about is, obviously you live in Eretz Yisrael, you live in Alon Shvut, you've been here for over 30 years, but what really drew you here to want to make your roots in Eretz Yisrael, to build a family, and then ultimately to just start working at Midreshet HaRova?
As your wife could tell you, I'm, for good or for bad, I'm a very black and white person. And once, when I was younger, I wasn't always so frum. I come from a traditional family. Once I became seriously and more intensely frum, it's very hard for me to say the tefillot that we say every day. When I have the chance to be here and not be here, I feel a bit like a hypocrite. So I could have lived. I'm not a negative Zionist. I didn't come to Israel because there were problems in England. There was no real Arab population in England when I grew up. There were lefts, there were anti-Semites, nothing very serious. But I didn't come here because I liked England very much. I came here because I believed a Jew should live in Israel, and if that's what you believe, that's what you have to do, right?
1,000%.
That's what you did. So.
Baruch Hashem, not everybody has obviously their own cheshbonos, and Baruch Hashem, we both live here in Israel, and I'm filming this in Beit Shemesh, and you're in Yerushalayim, and definitely a good point. And my other question that I had was, when you started working at Midreshet HaRova in the beginning, this was 33 plus years ago. Take me through that. What was that experience like in the beginning? Obviously, Israel is much more built up today, and the old city has gone through a lot in 33 years. So take me on the ground. What was it like in the beginning years of Midreshet HaRova for you?
The beginning, I was just a teacher, and in the outset, Bnei Akiva ran the Midrashah. The building that we now own was a ma'on of Bnei Akiva Olami. It was a youth hostel that people used to, Chuznikim who came to Israel, they used to live in the youth hostel. And Bnei Akiva decided that they wanted to turn it into a seminary. For whatever reasons, I don't know. And they asked various people in Bnei Akiva Olami to teach. So I was teaching here for a few years. And then in my last year of smicha, they approached me and said, well, we're looking for someone to take over. Would you like to take over? I had two options on the table at the time. One was to be a teacher in a yeshiva, and one was to run this program. And for me, running a program was incomparable in its potential to being a teacher in the classroom. So we took it on. It's grown enormously. When we took over the school, myself and Jeremy, my colleague, when we took over the school, it was mainly, almost totally for South Africans, Australians, and English girls, people on Bnei Akiva programs. In 1995, we decided to go to America. 1996 was the first year that we went to America. Those who are old enough will remember the blizzard of 96. I landed in JFK and sat in a house, blocked in by snow for 6 days, and came back. I got 7 girls. And the year after, I got 11. The year after, we got 14. Now, Baruch Hashem, we number close to 130 girls, Baruch Hashem. But it's been stage by stage. We don't take anything for granted. Those of us who've been here for long enough, when we have many applications, we never moan, we're never upset. We remember our humble beginnings and we never forget them. And Baruch Hashem, the place speaks for itself. I am surrounded by wonderful staff, really an incredible group of staff. And I've grown with the school. I was young when I started. I was only 29 when I started. A bit older now.
It's really special, and to the fact that you were able to go from the size that it was back then to Baruch Hashem, a growing seminary. And I know so many amazing people that have gone to Midreshet HaRova, and my wife obviously is a product of your seminary. For yourself, working in that environment for 33 years and coming across so many different students, do you have any, what keeps you going? Meaning you could do the same job for so many years, but wake up after 20 years and not have the same excitement to get up and do your job, but it seems, Baruch Hashem, like you do. So what has kept you going all these years?
It's not the same job. every student's a world. Every year is different. Every year it really is different. It's not a cliche. Every year is different. The students are different. It's just not the same. Changes, different challenges. Each girl is another world, and I've not got bored of it. The teaching never got taught. Sometimes the administration, the traveling gets a bit on top of you. It's not as exciting as it was to travel when we first traveled, and I used to phone my wife. I'm in Chicago, I'm in Boston. Now I'm not so excited about traveling, but the students are teaching. I still love walking into a classroom, love teaching, meeting different people, different issues that are changing all the time. I'm just, I suppose one day maybe I will get up and not have any koach. It hasn't happened yet, so.
Baruch Hashem, Hashem's given you a lot of siyata d'shmaya in that regard, and you should keep going for many years to come.
Amen.
In terms of obviously your years in HaRova, as I was alluding to before, is that there's been a lot that has gone on in Israel in the past 33 years. Do you have any memorable moments or things that have happened during your years in HaRova that were like, wow, like those were moments that I remember?
There are individual moments with students. We've been through a lot. 2 intifadas, a couple of wars. We had the blowing up of buses in 2002. We had the stabbing campaign. The only event that ever really closed the doors of the Midrashah, I wasn't even here. My mother died on the first day of Corona, and I was sitting Shiva, and we had no choice. It was near Pesach, and a lot of girls were going home anyway. And we had to close our doors the first time and only time we've ever closed our doors. I can say that what has amazed me over the years, because I am in touch with other organizations, not other seminaries only, but other organizations. What is quite amazing is the religious community in the diaspora is always so supportive of Israel. Our numbers have never suffered so far, Be'ezrat Hashem, from anything. War, even the most recent war, which shocked us all, we were already in a school year. About 30 students flew home in the first week of the war. They were all back within, I suppose, 4 or 5 weeks. They were all back. And I think it was merely the shock of what had happened. A bit like 9/11, there was a big shock when it actually happened until people got a perspective of what was actually going on, what was safe and what wasn't safe. It's actually probably been, Liani, the safest time in my life in Jerusalem, the first months of the war, because no one was allowed in and no one was allowed out. It was just Jews in the area and local Arabs who were fine. I have so many memorable moments. I don't even know where to start, but I do have an incredible hakarat hatov for the parent body, and it's not easy. It's very clear that when people film in Israel, they don't film people drinking cups of coffee. I once did that, by the way, on a Friday morning in the middle of something or other. I came here and I filmed the Rova. It was so quiet. People were having coffee. I said, they're not going to film this on CNN because it's not interesting, but this is what it is. And parents only see the news. They have colleagues in their workplaces that think they're crazy, and they still send their kids, and they still come and support, which to me is amazing. I would like to think I would do the same, but it's an amazing thing that parents who are hearing the news and seeing the news, nonetheless, actually, mainly to give money, that's one thing, but to send your children, which are the dearest thing that you have, to Israel in such a situation, to my mind, is an incredible thing. It's an incredible reflection on the religious community. And I know of, not all, but some non-religious groups that have had to close down during these periods because they simply couldn't get the kids. The kids just wouldn't come. The support has been incredible, always very, very incredible. Yeah.
It's completely true. And I think that, to your point of, you see things on the news, a lot of people, in the world only see one thing, when in reality it might be completely different. And I think it's really a phenomenal point. And to touch on what you were saying a second ago, is that obviously you've been through so much. You've been through 2 intifadas, you've been through wars, you've been through a lot in your time in HaRova, and you're like, where could I even start? But if you had to pick out 1 or 2 memorable stories or moments, what would those be, if you could think about it right now?
Well, in recent moments, recent things come up more. Well, I do have this wonderful experience now of having grand students, I call them, students of students. I've already had 7 or 8 students of students who come to the Midreshet. On one occasion, I was interviewing in England, and I was actually at a fair in England, and the mother sat down, And I'm very good with names. I remembered the mother, remembered she was going to be a doctor. And I actually said, "Did you become a doctor?" She said yes. And her daughter came here. I think I actually cried when I saw her. I was like very emotional. That was a very memorable moment. And I've had, thank God, they increase every year. More children of children, which is wonderful. I think one of sad and inspiring moments was when one of our students 4 or 5 years ago, Sinai Wegline, she was called, her husband was killed on the first day of the war. And I went to the funeral and went to the Shiva, and Sinai comes back very often. She comes back every Yom Kippur. In fact, the Yom Kippur, the week or two before he was killed, they were in the Midrashan called Nidre, and she has spoken in the Midrashan. She's coming with us to Poland. And, I preach a lot, but when you see students who are living it, it's more than inspiring. It's one thing is to tell people what you think is true, but our belief is defined in reality. And when we face up to reality and how we face reality, then you can't really act when you're faced with reality. You have to, you discover who you are, and you discover who other people are. And she has been an incredible inspiration. But I have so many students who have inspired in that way, either through sickness or sickness of their husbands or sickness of their children. And I learn so much from my students. My material is my students. It's what I learn from. I learn about human nature. It's much easier to learn from other people. There's no end. I will tell you that probably the greatest ever, without mentioning names and or countries, because that might give it away. I had a student who, when I first interviewed her, wasn't doing well at all, mental health-wise. And she came to Israel, and she was here. She was actually here for 3.5 years. And she loved the school, and we loved her. And eventually she went home. She had told us on numerous occasions during the 3 years she wasn't going to get married, wasn't going to have kids, but she did get married, and she does have kids. And on one occasion, her father and her parents and her family came to Israel, and they invited me and a couple of the other rabbis for a meal at a hotel, and we went. And during the meal, she left the table to look after the kids, and the father, who has since passed away, a wonderful man, the father looked at me and mouthed to me, "Would you believe it?" And I nodded back, and I've often said that if the only reason the Midrashah came into being was for this, it was worthwhile. That is a lasting feeling I have. They are moments all the time, but that remains with me, because when we first met this student, she wasn't doing well, and she is doing so well now, and we're so proud of her, and she is what she should be, and she's done it herself. I always say to my students, where they often say it's because of us, it's because of us. Nothing is because of us. We are a medium. Everything is theirs, and we are proud to accompany them, to be with them on the journey. But what human beings' successes are theirs, their failures are theirs, and we can't take the credit, we can't take the blame. So many good moments, and so many funny moments. Actually, being in the Rova is a funny place. I told the students if I were to write a book about my experiences in the Rova, people wouldn't believe them, but it would be a bestseller. Like crazy.
I need a few of these right now.
They're very funny moments. I've been accused by an Armenian as being a Turk who perpetrated genocide. I've seen a mouse attack a cat in the Cardo, which destroyed my feelings of Tom and Jerry that I grew up with. Very, very comical moments. So the Rova is a very, very, very special place. But like I say to the students, someone goes to Manhattan, they go to Manhattan to take in a show or to get a good meal. Everyone coming to the Rova is coming to pray. That's why they come to the Rova. There's nothing else to do in the Rova. No one's coming here for a meal. There are restaurants everywhere else in Yerushalayim, everywhere else in the country. People are coming to the Rova ultimately to go to the Kotel, ultimately to pray. And it's a great place to be. It's an open-air yeshiva. It really is. It's a wonderful atmosphere when it's busy, when it's not busy. So, Baruch Hashem, no end to memories.
And I can imagine. And first of all, when that book comes out, Bezrat Hashem, one day, of your funny stories, I'm very excited to listen to read that one. And a bunch of the things that you just said, very, very touching and meaningful. And the students that you've had throughout your years at HaRova, I can't even imagine how much nachas you get from seeing them and everything. And to touch on, by the way, what you were saying before at the Levaya for Sienna Gedalia's husband, I was there also with my wife Yali in the back, and I remember how touching and it was a hard time, obviously, and talking about her as one of your alumni of Midreshet HaRova, living in the essence of obviously a lot of the core values that HaRova tries to give over to the Talmidot. My thought is to you, my question is when you have students that come into Midreshet HaRova, what are like the core messages and values that you hope that they leave after their time in seminary? What would those be?
Not what you would expect me to say, but my most important message is that they think about life and make decisions based on their thinking, not that they don't live life on autopilot. If it's right for a person to be here, I would love them to be here, but more than anything else, I would like them to be able to, and I have countless students like that, including your wife, who years down the line are still doing it. You know that there are two ways you can look at the year experience. You can look at it as I call it Yitro and Mishpatim. Parshat Yitro is an experience. It's a revelation, an event. But without Mishpatim, it doesn't exist. Na'aseh v'nishma is after Parshat Mishpatim. Mishpatim is the detail, is keeping going when the glamour has fallen to the side. And if our students, that's my pride. I have imahot bayit who are working for me, who are my students. I have mashgichot who are working for me, who are my students. I have even teachers who are working for me, who are my students. Not, by the way, just from Midreshet HaRova, but from Yeshivat HaKotel as well. And the fact that someone has thought through and things through. I want to tell you a story, which isn't great PR, I suppose, but maybe it is. I have no idea. It doesn't matter. I'm walking down Fifth Avenue, somewhere in Manhattan, somewhere big, one of those big streets, and I recognize a student walking towards me. Now, from the student's perspective, this is really bad luck because she's wearing pants. And who is she likely to meet in the middle of Manhattan wearing pants? She sees me coming towards her, and it must be like a bad dream. Like it's 4 or 5 years after she's left the midrashah, and she starts to cross the road. So I crossed the road after her, and eventually I met up with her, and I said to her, I'm so upset with you. I said, do you really think that I wouldn't want to see you because you're wearing pants? Do you really think that I wouldn't be able to smile at you and talk to you because you don't fit into some kind of stereotype? I said, I don't really, you make your decisions, you make your thinking decisions, and ultimately we're responsible for our decisions. But I want you to speak to me whatever. I want a student to walk into the midrashah when she goes to the kotel, whether she's dressed as the Shulchan Aruch says or she's not dressed as the Shulchan Aruch says. I want to meet her. She's still my student, and she makes her choices just as our children make choices, and they don't always make the choices that we want them to make as they grow older. Very proud of all of my children. My children are war heroes, and I'm not. I'm just a Jeep driver, and now I just look at bodies at Shura. So I'm pretty minimal as far as the army is concerned. But really, the most important thing for me is a girl comes to the school, and she learns how to think, and she thinks about life. Life is so precious. It's so short as well. Even if we're Zoche and we live 90, 100 years, it's so short. And as you're realizing now, it flies by so quickly that we think about life and we make decisions, and we don't just get up without thinking. A bit like Rabbi Nachman, every day is a new day, a brand new day. And that's really, I want them to learn how to think, and that's very much reflected in the Midrashah. We have such diversity in the school. The point is, and we have been critiqued about it, but I like the diversity of teacher. I'm not talking about diversity of student is great, but diversity of teacher enables for people to hear different things, all within the spectrum of what we call accepted or legitimate, authentic orthodoxy. But I want them to hear different views. I want them to learn how to think, and I want them to keep thinking once they've left. I don't want the year to become some kind of Har Sinai without Mishpatim, just a photo album, but something that they remember, they come back to. Very, very important to me. And I suppose more important than anything else is that they be good people. There's a lot of, whenever I teach Mesilat Yisharim, there's a lot of Chasidus in Ben Adam Lemakom. There's not so much Chasidus in Ben Adam Lechaverim. There's, it's in the Midah of Chasidus. I'm not talking about the Chasidim per se. They learn to be good people, and it's very, very important.
I could not agree more. And first of all, I love that story about that Talmidah that you ran into in New York City, and the fact that you had the courage to run after her, and then to address her. No, it's something that is very special, and the fact that not everybody fits into a specific stereotype is something that we all need to work on our Am Yisrael in that regard, and also your other point of Hamachadash B'chol Yom Tamid, like you're really like every single day. You got to keep thinking. You're new, and it's very special. And I could not agree more with that message. And another thing that I'm thinking about, which is so impactful, with the work that you do in HaRova, and obviously this goes beyond HaRova, is the amount of trips that you've taken to Poland and how much that plays into the role of. I know it's something I talk about this with Yali, my wife, all the time. Like, she's like, Rav Milston is so connected and everything, and all she talks about is that trip that she went on for, I think, 10 days to all different places and how you led it, and it was just so impactful. So take me through that and the listeners a little bit of, like, what drew you so much to obviously want to take, groups to Poland and so on and so forth.
I actually don't know. I come from a family where my mother, Alea Shalom, was from Gibraltar, which is nothing to do with the Shoah. Any connection with Gibraltar is Spain. Franco was not part of the war. Even though Hitler tried to convince him he would not enter the war. And my dad is third generation from England. He lives in Israel now, but he's third generation English. The story my parents tell me is that one year they took me, I must have been 8 years old, they took me to Holland. And the family went to see Anna Frank's house. And apparently, this is a story. I love the story. I can't remember it, but we came back to a hotel which was predominantly German. It's 1973, 74. Predominantly German, which means middle-aged people would have been soldiers during the war. And apparently I stood up in the lobby of the hotel, pointed at the Germans and asked if they were the Germans who killed Anne Franks. And then we moved hotels. We moved hotels very quickly, apparently. I've been, I suppose, obsessed with the Holocaust since I was 14 or 15, over 40 years, and read. The last 10 years, a lot of my reading has been based on Nazis, biographies of Nazis, even autobiographies of Nazis. I'm totally attached to the subject. I feel it's part of my attachment to all of the history of the last 100 years, from the Holocaust through to the State of Israel, that the possibility, I think I'm right in quoting Rav Amital, it's not possible to be a believing Jew and think that God isn't involved in all of these things, including the State of Israel and including Yerushalayim. And I all see that as part. I don't know God's plan. I have no idea of God's plan, and but it's clear to me that something very big is happening in the world. When I started in the Midrashah, there used to be a group that took all the SEMs to Poland. I forget, Heritage it was called, but our girls never signed up for it. So myself and my colleague Jeremy, who's in charge of finance here, we decided we were going to do our own trip. Jeremy is second generation. His grandparents were killed in Treblinka, and we started. And the first year we took other people. I think Avi Proctor took 1 year, but then we started doing it. Him and me. We've been doing it for 25 years together. I go twice a year. I do that, and I do a Mizrahi trip, and Jeremy does about 4 times a year. And I never ever get bored of going to Poland. Just adds them to I think the fact that thousands of Jews go back to the graves of people they didn't even know from 80 years ago is an incredible testimony to Am Yisrael. There are a lot of lessons to be learned there, and we don't just do, as Yali I'm sure told you, we don't just do Holocaust. I'm not sure whether before Mr. Putin decided to go to Uman, we used to go to the Ukraine every year as well, but we haven't been able to do that, so we replaced the Ukraine with Lithuania. So we go to Vilna. This year we're going to Vilna and Kovna. There's a lot to be learned about what was, and to celebrate the greatness of what was, if it's Hasidic greatness, if it's Rebbe Elimelech, the Chozeh Lublin, the Kotsker Rebbe, the Gera Rebbe, or if it's the Vilna Gaon. Baruch Hashem, I get to see the Vilna Gaon twice a year, and we'll be in Kovna as well this year, please God. For me, more than anything, I have to tell you, above and beyond Holocaust, which is benafshi, it is in today's in today's climate, the only time in the year that I have the students 100%. We don't allow them to take phones to Poland. They can have phones for photographs and for music, but they can't be online. And the majority of girls keep that rule. And I just have their attention for a whole week. And I don't have that all year because, the phone is probably one of the biggest challenges to keep people focused and keep people aware of what's going on. And in Poland, they're focused and we're with them on the bus. And, you're just with the students for a year. It's a week in the year. Actually, a parent a few years ago sat opposite me. He said he's second, third generation. He's giving me 5 minutes to argue the case for his daughter going to Poland. And I told him, forget Poland. I said, we can educate for a week in Poland, like we can't educate the whole year. And she came. Actually, she came. It's the most fantastic year. The relationships with students is just never the same after Poland. It's an educational experience together. And we're not limited by the various limitations of Misrad HaChinuch. We're a private organization, so we go wherever we go. And it's Baruch Hashem, it's something I enjoy very much. And again, I even going with parents, we just came back in November from parent trip with the Mizrahi, which a phenomenal trip. So Baruch Hashem, it's developed as well. And this year, I was like 80 girls are signed up for this year's trip. So that, Baruch Hashem, it's 2/3 of the school is coming on the trip. And most of the ones who aren't coming are people who've already been. So Baruch Hashem, as long as, we're getting to the last group of survivors now. We need people to carry on the message. It's very, very important.
And it's so special, by the way, with everything that you do in your trips and bringing people to Poland. And yeah, it's there are people like yourself, very special people, Baruch Hashem, like yourself, that we have in our community that have dedicated so much of their life to carry on that message. And time is running out, obviously, with how many survivors are still left. And when I heard this trip from my wife, I was like, wow, like I wish I had this zchut to attend that trip with you. And part of one of the messages, as you were saying a second ago, of when you take students to Poland, you're showing them all that has gone on in the past. And then, as you were saying, is that, coming back to Israel and seeing everything that's going on in Israel, obviously it ties into the ultimate, the whole message of what's going on. And especially, as we were discussing earlier also, is that, we're living in a very unique time right now. There's obviously a war that, kind of just finished, there's still obviously things going on in Israel. So talk about like this time period that we're in right now. Like what's it like for Am Yisrael in a spiritual sense, in an emotional sense? Like touch on now a little bit.
Well, so we could speak all day, but first of all, in connection with Poland, my first trip back to Poland was actually with the Mizrahi group a few months after, and it was difficult. It was like slightly realigning, redefining what is the same, what is different. I never experienced in my life a pogrom. I've read about them, studied them, been to places where they took place. I was even in Kishinev once, and where the pogrom took place, but to be in Yed Vavna, where they killed all of the Jews, the Poles, and then a few months after, drawing the comparisons, and there are contrasts, but we have an army, Baruch Hashem. I have to say, the last 2 years, I have to first of all tell you on a personal level, has been very challenging. On the actual day, the first thing I can tell you, I don't mind because I've said it in public many times. Like I said at the beginning, a person is defined by the way they react. Now, I daven vatikin. I just get up early, not because I don't sleep. I sleep, but I get up early. I'm not a late night person. And on the morning of Simchat Torah, I had daven vatikin. In fact, I was bar musaf when my wife came into the shul and told me to come out, but I was chazan. I couldn't come out. There were sirens, but well, we have sirens or whatever. I didn't imagine it was any different from other sirens. I had to look after my dad. My dad lives in the yeshuv, but I had to get to my dad. But so straight after I went there, and my son walks into the house. About an hour later, he was in Yerushalayim, but he drove home. He got called up. And then my other son, who was in the yeshuv, my older son is Givati, Palsar Givati. I mean, he's 30. The son below him is about 24, and he's Golani. They were both called up, and I think the hardest thing for me that day was saying goodbye. I had memories, even though I didn't have those memories of the Yom Kippur War, of kissing my kids goodbye on a Yom Tov, and them getting in uniform, and really not knowing what was going on. There was no reason why I could turn on the news, because the yeshuv wasn't under risk, and my kids knew what they were doing, and I knew where all my kids were. I think the hardest thing for me of that first day is that I sat in my study and I learned like I do after Vatikin, and I said a few Tehillim. And afterwards, I understood what other people did. You know, they got in their cars and they drove south. And it has been very upsetting for me that I didn't do that. It's something I think I should have done. And when people say, well, why should you have done it? I said, well, all these people did it, so why didn't I do it? I should have got in my car and driven. And that upsets me that wasn't my immediate reaction. There are many, many heroes who got in their cars and they drive. I'm an hour away from Nova. You know, you take the back roads from Gush Etzion. You can be in Nova, you can be in Reim, you can be in an hour and 5 minutes, and I could have gone there. I got a car, I could have schlepped people. The first days of the war were a real shock. Didn't feel, as is the case, as you know by now, living in Israel, the general reaction in Israeli is not for themselves, because that's the way we live. The general reaction of Israeli is how we can help, because that's the reality here. It depends what your environment is, but what can you do and how can you help? And in the Midrashah, once we got all the girls back. We had to get the girls back, but once we got the girls back, we ran a gun in the Midreshet because we have a bomb shelter, and the gun in the old city doesn't have a bomb shelter. So we ran a gun in the Midreshet, and we did events in the Midreshet. We did what we could do to help people, but we also wanted normalcy. And I told the girls many times the fact that they're here. People in the Rova used to come up to me and say, "This is inspiring." The fact that they stayed here. There were many people who ran away. I would say ran away. They had to go. They were here for Yom Tov. They went home. Whatever. They went away. But the fact that people stayed it gave a lot of chizuk. The fact that people visited gave a lot of people chizuk. And we actually ran a mission 2 months into the war. We ran a mission. We invited parents to come. It was the first mission that Mizrahi did. We went to the place. We actually got into Be'eri at the time, which very few people got into. It was connections that Jeremy had. The war has been difficult. It's been difficult having children my eldest son's been in Gaza 4 times, and the one time he wasn't in Gaza, he was in Lebanon. He spent 2 years, a medical student, he spent 2 years fighting. And the son beneath him has spent many years now, many months. They're all out of the army, but in Golani, and now he's doing course Katsinim. And my younger son is in Sadir. He's in Sadir. He just came out for a break before he does Katsinim. I'm very proud of that. That's why I came. My children serve in the army. We're coming up to Chanukah. I see them as Maccabim, no less as Maccabim. My middle son's called Yehuda. I called him Yehuda Maccabim. My oldest son's called Yitzchak. Yitzchak's a Maccabim. They're all Yuds. And Yonatan a Maccabim. I see them Maccabim. I have son-in-laws who was a tankist in Gaza. I'm very, very proud of them. I see the army as the reality of Biat HaMashiach, the reality of Am Yisrael, of Malchut, really Malchut, that we have an army and we can serve in that army. And I have to tell you, as I've told my students, from the first week of the war, I phoned the army once a week, if not twice a week, that they should redraft me. I'm getting on for 60 now, and I kind of got this continuous reply, don't call us, we'll call you. Because once you get a patur from Miluim, it's very, very hard to, and because I was shlabed, when I did the army, when I came on Aliyah, it's not like I was kravi, so eventually I got them to put me into Shura, where I was working at the beginning of the war, because I'm part of the Chevra Kadisha in Alon Shvut, so I was asked to go to Rishon. Rishon is where they took, after they identified bodies in Shura, to get them ready for burial, they took them to Rishon. And I was involved there in Rishon, getting body. You don't do a tahara on a murdered person, but getting bodies ready for kavur. And I did that for a week or so until they could no longer identify bodies. And then they moved me into a unit which isn't really used that much. Baruch Hashem, it's not used that much. Probably the hardest part of the war. I lost 2 relatives during the war. On my wife's side, we lost Pedaya Mark. Pedaya Mark was the son of Mickey Mark, who was killed by terrorists on his way from Otniel to Yerushalayim. His other son Shlomi was part of the Shabak, and he was killed in a motor accident. And then about 4 months ago, my niece's husband Tal Movshovitz was killed in Khan Yunis, very, very close to Tal. And she asked me to go and identify him, which was a privilege for me to go and see him. He was a most wonderful guy. He was in the Shabak and also Mempei Samech Mempei in Handasa Kravit. So there have been some very, very difficult parts to the war. And there have been some incredible things, you know. When you spoke to the kids at the beginning of the war, they were worried about Hezbollah, and Hezbollah kind of disappeared, and then Iran. And so many incredible things have happened in this war, unbelievable things, and some very, very tough things. We're living history. We are living history. So I've always told my students that you have a choice. You can either take a photograph or be in the photograph. So I'm very pleased to be in the photograph. I want to be part of the photograph. That's really important to me.
That is phenomenal. I've never heard that said before, and I love that, and I'm going to quote you on that, putting that there, of being part of the photograph, and obviously, you know, all the stories that you said are very, very touching and very special, and yeah, since the war started in Israel, a lot has gone on, and it has been a really, really, you know, call it a crazy time if we could even say it like that. But, you know, I'm thinking back to, okay, we just, you know, kind of went through a war, and you still also take trips to Poland. So how was what we've gone through in Israel during this time period now shaped your trips there? Because I assume they're probably not the same as they were before the war happened, right?
We're going to the same places. It's changed my thinking. It's very important for me because one of the issues with the Holocaust, one of the issues Bichlal today is the misuse of semantics, and people do it on purpose, right? The word genocide is a classic example. People using the word genocide like they would peanut butter. It's unbelievable. But we also have a lot of Jews who are using the word Shoah, especially in Israel. It comes up in the rhetoric in a misused manner, which is damaging. It's damaging because Shoah is unique. Shoah was the dismantling and destruction of human beings by factories. Gas chambers were factories. Auschwitz at its height was a factory, derobing, killing, burning. And there's nothing, even though it is true that everything that happened on Simchat Torah morning on October the 7th is very similar to the description of pogroms that we've seen, there is a fundamental difference. And the difference is that we have soldiers and we have an army. Why things didn't happen as quick as they should have done on that day is a question. But on the other hand, we have the Slotki brothers, we have the Chevra from Otniel, we have Chevra who just picked up their guns and went and they fought. And this is something that Jews haven't done for 2 millennia, that Jews haven't fought back. And I don't think, Baruch Hashem, I've never spoken to and don't intend to speak to any members of Hamas or Jihad. I don't think in their wildest dreams they believed that they would get the reaction that they got. I think they, from testimonies that I hear from various, I was reading one on Shabbat of Eitan Mor, that they thought he would be released in 2 weeks, that we would just capitulate because they had so many hostages, and they couldn't have believed in their wildest dreams. And this did not happen 80 years ago. We didn't have the wherewithal to do it. Whenever I go and stand in Milah 18, I always speak directly to Mordechai Nelevich and ask him, you know, would you have dreamed of the IDF when you were fighting in the Warsaw Ghetto? So there are similarities in the hate and the subhuman behavior of our enemies, but there are very few similarities in the reaction. There was heroism, so much heroism in the Holocaust. There was so much gevura of a woman walking to the gas chambers with her child and not abandoning her to survive. Even the fact that someone would light a Chanukiah in the Warsaw Ghetto. You know, in Esther Farbstein's book, she tells a story of a man who lit a Chanukiah, and the Nazis saw, and they pulled him outside and they put him in a barrel, filled it with gas, and burnt him. And while he was burning, he sang Maoz. So there's no lack of gevura in the Holocaust, but the gevura that we've seen is a new Jew. It's Baruch Hashem. It's Yemei Geula of. I don't know when Geula will actually be, but it's certainly Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. It's I believe in that there are ups and there are downs, but we have seen there's what to compare, but there's much more to contrast. There's much more that is Baruch Hashem. The fact that we can fight, and we do fight, and that we've stood the I'm not entering politics, but the way that Mr. Netanyahu has stood against the pressures of the Western world wouldn't have happened in the last 2,000 years. And whatever people want to say about him, whatever their politics are, but the ability to stand up and this Friday night, you should know, we had in Alon Shvut, we had a visit from the ambassador of the United States, Mr. Huckabee, came to our shul. We're in the middle of Yehuda v'Shomron, and he came and spoke in our shul, and different times. And so there is much to compare. The hate, we can't be complacent. There are people who want to kill us. And a student asked me the other day, would you forgive? So I said, but they have to ask for forgiveness. They won't even ask for forgiveness. They don't even regret their actions. All they're saying is if you give them a gun, they'll do it again. So the fact that there is, unfortunately, elements that need to be compared, but Baruch Hashem, we are in a different place, and there's a lot of sadness and a lot of hardship, but a lot of pride as well, a lot of pride.
And you talk about pride, and to that point is like, first of all, I want to touch on actually Mike Huckabee before I touch on the other point I had. It was, what was that like? I didn't even know this happened, and I don't know if anybody knows that this happened. So take me through what happened. We're filming this on Sunday, December 14th, just so people know, because it might not come out until another few weeks.
It happened Friday night. Erev Shabbos had just passed. I came to shul. I sit in the front of the shul, and Rav Rimon is quite well known, very well known, and he is in the right in the front. And I see this man with a beard. I actually didn't recognize him, and people are talking to him. And to be honest, I thought, oh, we got to guess Rabbi. Oy vey, what's going to happen? He's going to speak for 20 minutes. That's what I thought. You know, he's got a beard, and then Rav Rimon gets up and he introduces him, and he says, "Here we have with us the ambassador." And I said, "Wow, it's Huckabee." And he got up and he spoke. I think he's a priest, or was a priest. That's what people told me. He spoke about Yosef. He spoke about the hardship of Yosef, and he spoke about Yosef's dreaming and never giving up dreaming, and that's how he sees Israel. But I've said to people today, you know, he gave a Dvar Torah for 3 minutes and sat down. Halavai, every rabbi would do that, you know. But thinking about it afterwards, the ambassador of the United States of America comes and speaks in a shul in Yehuda, Amor Gush Etzion, whatever, you know. When Trump spoke on Hoshana Rabbah, you know, that speech, we were getting ready for Shmini Atzeret, but that speech, Mr. Trump is Mr. Trump, for good or for bad, whatever you think, but a president to speak for that amount of time in Knesset and say the things that he said, you know, you compare us to where we are now, and look at people lying in their barracks in liberation in January 1945 in Auschwitz, and you think, Baruch Hashem, you know, something. I think one has to say as follows. When I'm in Poland, I say very often, you know, if to say I won in the Holocaust on an individual level isn't true. To say families were destroyed, communities were wiped out, but our focus has to be on Am Yisrael. If you can see beyond your front door and beyond your street, and you can see our people, then you can have a lot of faith, because we really are Am HaNetzach. We've been around for 2,000 years. We have been through so many things, and loich benero. You know, it's simple. It's as simple as that. But you have to be able, and it's so hard. You know, I've got a very brave niece. She has two children. She's 5 months without her husband, and if you can just see behind the hardship and the pain of the individual and the family, and you can look at our people. It's an amazing people, and I saw scenes. If we're talking about the war bichlal, it would be unfair for me to not mention. I have a parent in this school. She had her girl is Shana Bet now. When she was in Shana Aleph, the parent came to visit. She said, "Whatever your boys need in the army, I can get it for you." I'm telling you, within 2 days of each request, she got them ceramics, she got them helmets, she got them. Eventually, she was taken to the president for a meeting, and I remember when I was one of the years, I think the year before, a few months after the war, when I was recruiting, and I came to JFK to fly home, the entire area of check-in was full of kit bags. The generosity and support that Am Yisrael has shown here, it's quite an incredible people. Who Rav Amital said on numerous occasions when he spoke about the Holocaust, he said, "If I have a choice to be a perpetrator, a bystander, or a victim, I will always choose to be the victim." We have a lot to be proud of. We have a lot to be proud of in our people. We have to be able to not become hard-hearted and cold, but to cry, to see the tragedy, but to see beyond and to see the greatness of our people, which isn't always so easy. but if we can, every so often stand back. That's what I leave Yom Ha'atzmaut for. There's one day in the year where I stand back with such incredible pride of being a part of this and being a part of this. It's just an incredible people. Incredible people. And most of my son's unit, my eldest son's unit, he asked me to go speak to them before they went into Gaza the first time. And none of them are from. And it totally re-energized my belief in the youth. Because you have a lot of, when you look back at the youth today and the media and all the, whatever, everything to do with it is just very, very different. But these chevra, b'siyata d'ishma, have saved our country, Tattoos, matus, whatever, they've saved our country. They are heroes, mamash heroes. And I felt standing in front of them, hinani he'ani mimas, like how can I stand in front of you? And I do their weddings now, Baruch Hashem, twice at least I've been able to do, from my son's unit, I've been able to do the weddings of the soldiers, and it's such a simcha to do that and give them something a little bit back for the courage, the bravery, time and again. Incredible,
Wow, Micham Kol Yisrael, mamish. It's really, really special, and honestly, I love all these different stories and just real life examples that you're giving. And obviously, as we're ending in the last few minutes of this episode, one of the last two questions that I have for you is that for someone that's listening to this episode, I'm taking a lot of chizuk from this, and Baruch Hashem, I live in Israel. But if somebody's listening to this and they're years out from Midreshet HaRova or whatever yeshiva or seminary that they went to, and they want to feel connected to Israel and Am Yisrael in whatever way they possibly can, what would your advice be?
Listen, everyone has their. I think we just have to be motivated to do something, and so many people are doing, and to do where you can do as far as Torah is concerned. Today, you can hear Torah all the time. You can go online, you can hear Torah. You can visit. You can be on Zooms. You can. And there's so much anyone can do if it's your community, if it's the Jews around you. Yeah, every country needs chizuk at the moment. Right? In the Jews of England, it's not easy being surrounded in the environment they're surrounded. And now the Jews of New York. I'm going to New York for the first time just after Hanukkah. I don't know how people are stomaching what's going on there, how they understand what's going on there after all the stories with the universities. Whatever someone can do, but what you're good at, do what you can do. Eventually someone told me, after I trying again and again and again to get in the army, they said, listen, Chabal Lasman, what are you going to do in the army? Like, what are you actually going to do? They're not going to send you to Gaza. They're not going to send you to Lebanon. You do something very, very menial. So what you're doing now is more important, so you're not wearing a uniform. So you're not wearing a uniform. So you don't feel you're part. But you're part by default, de facto. You're part because you're part of Am Yisrael. Whatever someone can do, I would say to students, for any girls, for any yeshiva students, something that's really important. Take me 2 minutes to say it, but it's very important. I was in Australia many years ago. I was discussing something with a student, and she said a couple of things to me which were fine. And then she said to me, anyway, my year in Midrashah wasn't real. And I actually stopped in the middle of the street and I said, no, that's not true. And I say this to students at the end of davening on Yom Kippur as well. You have the most fantastic davening on Yom Kippur. The likelihood that you're going to have that davening again tomorrow or the day after or even the day after is very, very unlikely. So what does it give you? What do you take away? Your takeaway is that because you've been there, you know that it exists and that you know that you can go back there. So if you were in Midrashah or Yeshiva many years ago, you experience things. Don't become cynical. You can't necessarily sustain that. Mi aleh b'har Hashem or mi yakum. That's what Rav Amital always used to say. One thing is to get there, but who stays there? But once you were there, you know it exists. You know it's not a dream. You know it's not a myth. You've been there. So if you've been there, you can go back there. And you can't necessarily go back there every week. And you can't necessarily relive the atmosphere. I was lucky to have two of the greatest Rosh Yeshiva anyone could have, Rav Amital and Rav Lichtenstein. They're up on my wall, and I feed off them to this day. I was in Yeshiva in 1983. That was my year in Israel. I feed off them to this day. And I have moments which are great, and I have moments that aren't so great. But I know that the great moments are there, and I know that they're attainable because I've been there. And if I've been there, it exists. I think that's important as we get on in life and we move further away from this experience, which is an incredible platform for the rest of our lives, a year in Israel. We remember that we had it, and we can revisit. We can't necessarily sustain it. There's a certain intensity that once you're at work and once you have children and you have other responsibilities, it's very hard to sustain. But you can go back there, and it does exist. That's really important.
That was amazing. Like there's so many vorts that you're saying throughout this episode that I'm going to take with me. And that point of, even if you left so long ago, it was Mi'alab Bahar Hashem, like it's there, like I heard a vort that, people say, why does the mach touch you on the mouth, and you forget the entire Torah? Why don't you just remember the whole Torah? Because, eventually when you come back to it, it's going to be familiar. And I think that, that hopefully echoes your point. And, my final question to you is, as we end off, and this could be related to anything we talked about today, or just, whatever you want. But for whoever's listening to this podcast, at whatever stage of life, whoever they are, if you had one message that was like, keep this message in a bottle with you for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Live life. Live life. Cherish every moment. Cherish your children when they're young because they get old, and cherish them when they're old because they get older. But live life. Live it as much as you can. Fulfill life in every way. If you have a gift, use that gift, and if you have something to say it. But live life and live your dreams. We're in the Parshas of Yosef. Live your dreams. The one bracha I always give my students, which we can end with, is I had a dream. I had a dream when I was a young Bnei Akiva Chanich, when I was 14, 15, 16, and I'm living my dream. And that's the most fulfilling bracha everyone can have. Have a dream and live it. And Bezrat Hashem.
Oh man, that is so special. The fact that you could wake up every single day and do the work that you do. And it's, the work that you do is very, very special. And that was one of the reasons why, obviously, I wanted you to join me today. And the fact that you did, I'm forever grateful. And I started with Hakar Satov, and I'm going to end off with Hakar Satov. The amount of time that you've taken to spend with me is just, I really appreciate it. And also, the amount that you've done to affect so many amazing Talmidot of yourself, and honestly, my wife. And that's how I'm here today. And I just want to say thank you. Your messages were really, really touching, and it was just an absolute pleasure having you on. So thank you.
Chanukah Sameach. Thank you.
Chanukah Sameach. That is a wrap for this week's episode with Rav Milston. And if there was one takeaway for myself that I took from all the things that we touched on today, which was just be as honest as you can for who you are as a Jew. We are new people every single day, and we're always growing, and we're in no place to judge anybody. It's like the story you guys heard that Rav Milston said when he walked across the street and he saw a Talmidah that wasn't necessarily, dressed in the typical way that you would think a seminary alumni would be. And there was mamish zero judgment, and just the true Am Yisrael that he has for people is something that's so inspiring for myself. And hopefully we can all take that to heart and grow and just keep loving every Jew around us. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this episode, feel free to just give it a like. Follow us on all the different platforms. It just really helps, honestly, me keep growing on and doing this podcast. And also, lastly, if you got this far in the episode, because we're right at the end, my email's down below. If you enjoyed this episode, I always love hearing feedback. A lot of people like to reach out to me when they listen to these episodes and tell me someone else that you want me to interview. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon in next week's episode. All the best, everybody.